Hi, this is a special time for young disciples that we're doing this weekend. We're going to look at a Bible study and have an activity that you all can do at home with your family. And just to start, our Bible story today tells a story from the life of Elijah. Elijah was a prophet, which means he was someone who spoke words from God and spoke truth about what was going on in the world. But unfortunately, sometimes people didn't want to hear the things that God told Elijah to say. And sometimes Elijah had to say these things that God was telling him, even though he knew it would be unpopular. And so one time, Elijah had to tell the king of Israel something that the king didn't want to hear. So the king was really angry about this, and he was actually looking for Elijah and wanting to track him down and probably have him killed. So Elijah had to go on the run. He was in hiding, and God was taking care of him. But then God decided to send Elijah somewhere else. So we're going to read the story together in 1 Kings chapter 17. Okay, starting in verse 7. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. Go at once to Zarephath of Sidon and stay there. I have commanded a widow in that place to supply you with food. So Elijah went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar so that I may have a drink?" As she was going to get it, he called, "And bring me, please, also a piece of bread." So God sends Elijah to this new place. He meets a woman there, and he asks for bread. So guess what? Today we are going to make bread as our activity. You should have a bag with ingredients to make bread dough. And in the bag is already some flour, and some salt, and some yeast. So the first step to making our bread, gotta make sure the bag is really well closed, and you want to shake it. Shake it up really good. Make sure that all the ingredients are getting all mixed up in there. And so while you are shaking the bread, I'm going to go ahead and continue reading about Elijah. The woman replied, "As surely as the Lord your God lives, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." So, that doesn't sound good. If you're still shaking your ingredients, you can stop now. We know that God has been taking care of Elijah while this king is looking for him. And now he sends Elijah to someone who's supposed to give him food. But she doesn't even have really any food. She's almost out of flour and oil, which is what she needs for bread. Now, our bread doesn't use oil, but it does need water. So you want to go ahead and get some water. So I've got my jar of lukewarm to slightly warm, just like a medium temperature water. And we need 2/3 cup of water that you want to pour into this bag of ingredients. Now I have a 1/3 measuring cup that I'm going to use. And I know I'm doing this on my own, but that's because I've baked this a lot before and I've done a lot of baking. So I've had a lot of practice. So if you haven't had a lot of practice, if this is new for you, like you can go ahead and ask your parents for help. That's okay. But maybe if you pour in 1/3 cup of water, and if you're doing this with like one of your siblings, maybe brother or sister can also pour in the other 1/3 cup of water. It's kind of up to you, but you just want to make sure that you get the water into the bag. And then what you want to do is you want to close the bag. Get it closed really tight again, kind of like you did before when you were shaking it. Because now we need to mix the water with our flour and our salt and our yeast. So go ahead and just kind of squeeze it just like I am, and just get all of everything mixed together as good as you can. And while you're doing that, I am going to continue reading our story. Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first, make a small cake of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me. And then make something for yourself and your son. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord gives rain in the land." So if you're still mixing up your ingredients, this is the next part of our story. Elijah says to go home and make the bread anyway, and asks her for bread anyway. And I think that's great, because it sounds like even though the woman and her son don't have much left to make bread, God's going to take care of them so that the woman can take care of Elijah. God's going to do a miracle, and the woman isn't going to run out of the things that she needs to eat. But the woman is asked to feed Elijah first. And doesn't that sound pretty hard? Like, it sounds hard to have to give up the last of your food to someone else instead of eating it yourself. But back then, people had a very high value for hospitality, even for strangers who were traveling through their town. And it was just because you never knew when you were going to be a stranger traveling to someone else's town. So you had to kind of rely on everyone to take care of everyone. And so that's what this woman does. She goes and she listens to Elijah, and she makes bread. And the story says, the woman went away and did as Elijah had told her. So that's what we're doing now. We're making this bread. And once you have all the ingredients mixed together, mine still has just a little bit more work to do, so I'll keep doing that. But once you do, you want to find a place where you can just kind of put it aside, like on a counter. You want to open up the bag very carefully, make sure nothing spills out, and just make sure that you put it somewhere where it can sit and the dough can rise. So you have to let it sit, let the dough kind of work all of the science that goes into making it rise with the yeast. You have to let it sit for 2 hours. So go ahead and find a place where it won't be disturbed. Put it on a counter somewhere in your kitchen, and just let it sit for a couple of hours, and I will see you back here in 2 hours when it's ready. Okay, welcome back. I hope you had a fun break and had something fun to do for the last couple hours. Your dough should be done rising. Mine has not actually risen that much, but that's going to be okay. But that means now we can bake the bread. However, if you do not yet want to bake the bread, if you don't want to make it right away, or if you just can't right now, if you don't have time, you can actually store the dough in the fridge for a couple of days. What you want to do is take your bag of dough and close it, except for just leave an inch, just a little bit open at the end. And then you can just keep that in the fridge, like put it somewhere where it's not gonna get in the way. And you can leave it in there for I think up to 3 days, and it should be still good. And then whenever you want to bake it later, just let it get, warm up and get to room temperature, and then you can bake it. But for now, if you want to bake it, for those of you who want to do it right now, first thing is to go ahead and turn on the oven to 450 degrees. And you can get your parents to help you with that if you're not sure how to use the oven. But then you want to open the bag. Should already be open, hopefully. And I just take a scissors. Again, this is something your parents can help you with. And cut open the bag. So I can get to it. And then I'm just gonna put just a little more flour on there just to help it where it's kind of still sticky in spots. So that as I shape it, won't be too sticky. I take off my jewelry. So what you wanna do is just squish it and start to form it into, you can make it into a ball shape. I like to make it into kind of this long oval shape. Just because I think that, to me, it looks just a little bit more like bread. And so now that it's in the shape that I want, go ahead and make it a little bit rounder. I'm going to take it and put it on a pan. And I can just get rid of this. It's not a bag anymore. Okay, so it's the shape that I want. I'm waiting for the oven to heat up. And I'm just gonna take a knife and cut little slashes in the top. And I'm not sure why people do this, but it's just something I've always seen that people do when they're making bread. So go ahead and do that too. And so now I'm ready to bake the bread. And I'm just gonna go ahead and put it in the oven. Like I said, if you're new to baking, it's okay to get some help and ask your parents for help too. So it's in the oven. I'm setting my timer for 25 minutes. But it should take about 25-30 minutes to bake. And then you'll have your bread, just like the widow and Elijah had their bread. I'm going to go ahead and read the very last part of the story. Okay. Remember, the woman went away and did as Elijah had asked. So there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. So God provided for this woman and her son, and in turn she was able to help take care of Elijah. So as you're finishing up your bread, go ahead and talk with your family and talk about maybe some of the ways that you've seen God provide for you, even in ways that you weren't expecting it. And so I hope that it comes out well and that you're able to enjoy your bread together. Thanks for being part of this message this weekend. Okay, bye.